When I heard this part in the trailer,
What is this? Like a tournament of champions?
I knew exactly what I was getting myself in for, so let's head on over to the review. Welcome back, film fans. This is Let's Be Real Brad. Today on the channel, I want to talk about the newest psychological horror film to hit theaters this past weekend, and that is Escape Room: Tournament of Champions. This is a direct sequel to the original 2019 Escape Room that was a massive financial success, making over $155 million on a $9 million budget. It didn't do crazy well with the critics either, as I thought it was more of a average, mediocre film. So now going into this movie and seeing the awful trailer, and with it being titled Tournament of Champions, I was pretty nervous to see how bad this movie was. And I'm gonna be honest, this movie is bad, but it was not as bad as I was anticipating it to be. I went to go see this movie with my girlfriend, and she hadn't even seen the first movie, and she called it by saying that they were gonna have a 2-minute intro that basically highlights everything we saw in the last movie. So you really didn't need to see that one. But then when this movie starts and it keeps going, they practically retcon it and they change some of the story and plot elements, which I thought made no sense. What makes this movie even worse with the writing? I found the dialogue to be so incredibly awful. I am not going into this movie expecting some Oscar-nominated screenplay here. I want something that's just going to be doable for the movie. But my goodness gracious, every single chance this movie gets is to just state the obvious to the audience, like, hey, look, a pencil. Oh, hey, look, there's a lock here. Oh, hey, look at this. It's so incredibly annoying. I found that this movie tried to dumb itself down to the audience, but even though this movie is practically made for teenagers, I would think teenagers are smart enough to figure it out, right? I guess not. Who knows? What I also hated about the writing is the predictability factor of it. In this movie, it is quite obvious of who's gonna die and who's gonna stay alive. The next negative I have with this movie is the acting. Everybody in this movie is really, really bad. I found all the performances to be so laughable, and it doesn't help with having a terrible screenplay for the actors to try to read off their lines. I totally get that, but the direction here and the performances and their delivery just doesn't do it for me. We have returning cast members of Taylor Russell and Logan Miller come back from the first film, and I thought they were incredibly awful in this movie, especially Logan Miller. I don't know what it was about his performance in particular, but he annoyed me to an inevitable end that I could not wait for his character just to be off screen just for like a couple seconds. My next negative with this movie is the visual effects. With this movie going from 9 million from the first movie going to 15 million, which is not a significant jump, you know there's going to be a lot more visual effects to use for the escape rooms and adding a little bit more CGI elements. But I really think this movie should have just relied more on trying to have practical effects and some cooler direction with the camera like they did at some point in the first movie, because the CGI is so awful, especially with the lightning that we see in the trailer. It looks just as bad as in the trailer, and I know it's just a small part of the movie, but when the lightning is practically part of one whole escape room of why they can't do things in the escape room as a plot device, yeah, it looks really terrible. And there's some other parts in the other escape rooms that they go into that just looks so unbelievably fake, as the actors aren't really interacting with the CGI elements, so it takes you right out of the movie. My last negative with this movie is the horror. As you saw from the first movie, it's not scary in the slightest. There is a ton of tension and some thrilling moments that do happen in certain moments here and there, but I thought that movie's biggest problem is that that movie was really not scary and didn't have me on the edge of my seat. But in this movie, they don't even try to have that much tension, and it feels like it goes all the way down the drain. I think there are moments where they try to be scary and try to have some tension with the characters, but at every point it fell flat. As much as I am barreling through this movie, there is some positives that I do have with it that didn't make me flat out hate it, and it's going to be the escape rooms. I talked about this earlier in the video, but the escape rooms themselves go by so fast. It is kind of interesting to see, oh, what are they going to do next? Trying to find the clues in the background, trying to figure it out before the characters do, which pretty much happens most of the time in this movie. But I had a good time seeing how these escape rooms were going to change as they go along with their timers and the sand and the lasers. It was all quite interesting, even if it's not in a good way. And my next positive is something I just mentioned, is that this movie is pretty entertaining. In the first 10 to 15 minutes, this movie is quite boring, and it goes through things that are just the basic sequelitis stuff that you would normally come to see, that just is there just to set up what we're actually here for, because this movie is quite lazy in its delivery. But once we get to the traps, I was thoroughly entertained. And sometimes I was just laughing at how bad this movie was, because there are many lines in this movie that I don't think that were very self-aware, because it's trying so hard to be cool and interesting, have some cool twists along the way. And I was having an absolute blast just making fun of this stupid, dumb movie. So overall, guys, Escape Room Tournament of Champions is a bad movie that I simply cannot recommend. So I'm going to be giving Escape Room Tournament of Champions a 4 out of 10. Thank you all for watching, and I hope that you guys hit that subscribe button, leave a like if you want to, and ring that notification bell so I never get to miss you in a new upcoming video.